I want to be of use. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who stand in the line and haul in their places, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire must be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles the dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amorphous for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in the museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry and a person for work that is real. And we have some beautiful special music this morning with Peg and Miriam. And now we're going to sing our children downstairs to play with Leah and Melody.
This community of care is created through our work and time together, our commitment to one another. This is our covenant, to walk together in loving fellowship, to share our hopes and values as we pass these baskets. We thank you for your generous gifts, which support the work of this religious community and Unitarian Universalism in the world at large. As a reflection of our values, we're pleased to participate in the Change for Change program, and the coins you place in the basket today will support the work of nonprofits in and around the Grand Valley. With gratitude, we will now receive today's offering. This congregation is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share as we contribute to its life and we affirm our lives within it. And now we're going to do hymn 1017. We are building a new way. So that's the teal hymnal.
Good morning. All right. For those of you on Zoom, how does the microphone sound? Can you hear me okay? I'm getting a thumbs up. Good. So if you are fairly new within like the last 3 weeks or so, you haven't seen me up here at the pulpit yet. It has been a really long time since I haven't been in the pulpit for 3 Sundays in a row. So I've been here, but I've been behind the scenes, which is kind of nice. But it's nice to be back up here with all of you again. So as I'm sure all of us, most of us know, this is Labor Day weekend. And when I was growing up, what that meant for me was it was a 3-day weekend. And, or, when I was in school, it also meant the beginning of the school year, because back all of those decades ago, we used to start after Labor Day and then go into Memorial Day, and that's why you knew that you didn't always look forward to Labor Day and you always looked forward to Memorial Day. That's how I knew that. But for so many people, Labor Day, it means so much more. And I think this year in the United States of America, in the year 2025, I think it's really important that we take some time to remember and think about and honor what that means. So, like I said, for most of my life, I've taken Labor Day for granted. It just means the beginning of the school year. But the problem is our collective memory and our understanding of Labor Day is beginning to diminish. And when a collective memory begins to diminish or its origins begin to get rewritten with a completely new narrative, there's always that chance that we might repeat history. And sometimes the history that we begin to repeat is history not really worth repeating. And so I've been pushing back, like against technology a little bit, but I waded in just a little bit yesterday, and because my friends have been talking about what you can do with AI. So I just asked AI to tell me what the historical benefits of labor unions and collective action is. And literally in 2 seconds, I could have had a whole sermon. I mean, it's that easy and it's kind of that scary. But here's what it came up with: the 8-hour workday. In the late 19th and 20th centuries, unions fought against the 12 to 16-hour workday, and the labor movement's slogan was 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will. I grew up just knowing that that's what it was. I grew up with Saturdays, knowing that people didn't have to work on Saturdays. I grew up taking that for granted, but people had to fight for that. People had to fight to not be having to run around picking up Smarties for 16 hours a day, going home, barely getting any sleep, and then doing it again. Child labor laws. In the 1800s, children as young as 6 years old worked in factories and mines. And the unions were the key advocates for child labor restrictions, pushing for compulsory education and laws to protect children from exploitation. And I get overwhelmed with everything that has been in the news, but I believe that in Florida right now, they have just either removed the child labor laws or they have shrunk them to a much younger age. So legislation is taking us back towards those times so that children can now, they're probably talking about it's more freedom. Children now have the freedom to work until at least midnight in Florida, I believe. So the right, and part of that was with the child labor laws, then the idea behind that was children have a right to an education. And so get them out of the mines and get them into the schools, because every child has a right to be educated. That came from collective action, collective bargaining. The other thing that came together in 1911 is workplace safety. So in 1911, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York killed 156 people, mostly young immigrant women, because they were locked in a factory. The doors were locked and the unsafe conditions trapped them. So this outrage fueled by organized labor led to major improvements in workplace safety standards, fire codes, building regulations. And then, of course, there is all of the action to get fair wages and benefits so that you're not just getting paid piddly while somebody takes all of that money for themselves. And then, of course, civil rights and social justice for so many groups come not from just being nice and asking for it, but by finally getting to the point that people get outraged from being ignored, beaten down, and they finally realize that if they come together, there's more power. I was only one person up here holding the whole thing of Smarties. There was probably 80 of you over there, and then there were, 10 or 11 people up here, and yet I had them all. And yet, if you think about it, how easy would it have been to overtake me? Not violently necessarily, but maybe you just do what Debbie did, was you stand up, you go get the basket of candy, and you hand it out. That was very you. But this weekend is why we remember why it's important that we have labor unions, why we have collective action, why we have to remind ourselves over and over again that we are not alone. If we, one by one, are standing up here feeling like we are alone, then we have millions and billions of people who are powerless. But look how much power is in this room. If just one person, like Barb almost threw my whole Time for All Ages off because I was trying to get the kids not to like Melody and Leah, and Barb was like, well, why don't we just go share with them? Well, that takes my power away. If there's just one voice saying, wait a second, they're not the enemy over there. What are we doing? Why are we taking even more away from the people over here? Why can't we share what we have? So Barb was telling the kids that had a little bit, right? They have a little bit. Take the little that you have and share. But then Debbie was like, yeah, that's fine and good, but there's still not enough for everybody, so why don't we just go take from the source and spread the source out, right? Like the way that, so it's a both and, right? It's not an either or. We have to do what we can, but a lot of us individuals don't have tons of power. But it does help to be aware of the power that we do have. It helps to look around and see collectively the power that we have. And then also, it's important to look at the systemic power and figure out how do we distribute that in a more equitable way. And so, what I also want to talk about a little bit today is how the concept of prosperity is a spiritual concept. Metaphysically, prosperity is a metaphysical spiritual attribute. And from the spiritual definition of prosperity is the ability to generate what you need in the time that you need it. I'm going to say that again. Prosperity is the ability to generate what you need in the time that you need it. So if you really think about it, it's quite simple. And that need for all of us, for humanity, it changes over the years. Cavemen needed to know how to find shelter. and hunt and fish and protect themselves from bears. So if they had a cave and they had fire and they had fish, they had prosperity. There was no concept of money or cash or Bitcoin. They needed a cave, they needed fire, and they needed some fish. They needed protection. That was their concept of prosperity. And the people that survived had the skill sets and the know-how to survive that way. Babies need to know that when they use their voices to cry or express a need, that need will be acknowledged and they will be taken care of. That's prosperity. That is teaching children from the earliest age to use their voice to get what they need. Babies don't need money or houses or a mortgage. They need to use their voice and know that when they use that voice, everything that they need comes to them. Children gain a sense of prosperity when they learn how to trust the adults around them and ask for help when they need it. Right? I remember when I was little, walking back and forth to school, and maybe some of you remember this, there were these white hands that people, why am I crying over this? There were these white hands that people would put in their windows, and you knew that as a child, if there was a white hand in the window, it was called a helping hand. And you knew that you could just, if anybody was following you or you didn't feel safe, you would just go knock on that door. Did anybody else do that, or was that just a Littleton thing? Yeah, so people, right? That was a community way of communicating to our children that they are valued, protected, loved, and safe. That's how you get a sense of prosperity consciousness. And so over the years, the external expression of prosperity changes over time, right? It used to be a cave and fire, and then it was, golden bars of gold, and then it was money, and then it was stock exchanges, and now it's something called Bitcoin. But what true prosperity is the ability to generate and fill your needs when you need them. That is the spiritual principle. So, if you take the understanding of prosperity and that definition and think about prosperity consciousness, and then you look at the opposite and you look at something called poverty consciousness. And the poverty consciousness is the paradigm that you don't have enough, that you are lucky to have what you have, and because you don't really trust your ability to generate it again, you must guard it with everything that you have. And so isn't it interesting, if you think about this, if you think about those two definitions of what it means to have prosperity and what it means to have a poverty consciousness, isn't it interesting how many millionaires and billionaires and corporate executives and CEOs are the ones with poverty consciousness? And we wonder why, what's going on? How can one person, how can a few people have so much when they look out and so many people have so little? And here's the thing. If you are moving through your life, it doesn't matter what the number on your bank account is. If you are moving through your life thinking that you don't have enough, and even if you do have enough, you're not sure if you can generate that enough again. And then if you think perhaps that you don't really deserve it because on some level you lied, you cheated, and you exploited the people around you to get it, then your biggest fear is going to be that you don't deserve it. And therefore you are destined to lose it. And then you might fear other people getting more because in your poverty conscious paradigm, you can only imagine a world where people lie, cheat, and exploit others to get their needs met. And it's kind of sad if you think about it. And yet, I also want to be clear that not everybody who was wealthy or who is a CEO or has worked hard and is successful behaves like this. I am not saying that wealth and millionaires and billionaires are the problem. I am saying the mindset of the people who have whatever level of wealth. It's the mindset, it's the consciousness, because we can all name many amazing, wealthy CEOs and millionaires and billionaires who are doing really wonderful things, who are sharing their wealth, who are paying their employees fairly, who are not exploiting the people around them, who are investing in the lives of the people around them. They are sharing their abundance because they know that as they release it, if they have a prosperity consciousness, it'll come back. It'll come back. And they've done it in a way that is in alignment with spiritual principles, with compassion, humanity, love, laughter, joy. And so they know they're in alignment, it's going to come back. So true prosperity has nothing to do with the number in your bank account. You can have a very small number in that bank and be full of joy, surrounded by friends, and full of laughter. You can also have a huge number in that bank account and be full of joy, surrounded by friends, and full of laughter. But the consciousness is the same, and that's what I'm talking about. Because you can have a huge number in that bank account and be really a pretty nasty, mean, unhappy person. And it kind of goes back to what I talked about a few weeks ago when I said, have you ever seen a genuinely happy, joyful person be mean or cruel? No, you don't see that because they're aligned with these spiritual principles of what it means to be part of a joyful, loving atmosphere. And so, have you ever, if you really think about it with my definitions, do you ever see somebody who has a prosperity consciousness hoarding their resources? You don't see that either. You see people with a poverty consciousness hoarding their resources. And then what happens in the year 2025, if you have that poverty consciousness and you are scared that you don't deserve what you have, you need to make sure you hold on to what you have. You can literally convince yourself that it's okay to burn warehouses full of food that were ready to go to starving children instead of sharing that. That is how warped you can become if you don't have the right consciousness. And when we're like, what is going on in the world today? Why are people behaving this way? I think part of it, not the whole answer, but part of it is what I'm talking about, is that there is this poverty consciousness, and people who are in power are continuing to spread that idea that there's not enough, there will never be enough the people that don't have enough are going to be angry and try to take it from us, and so we have to hold it on tighter, and then we have to make enemies of the people that don't have enough because we're scared, because we think if the people that don't have enough eventually have enough, there's a fear that they will do to us what we're doing to them. And we can't ever let that happen. So we can never let them rise up. Even though people with prosperity consciousness don't think that way. And a lot of people that don't have a whole lot of money, that work hard, have prosperity consciousness, they're not wanting to hold anybody down. They're just wanting to live their lives with their families full of joy and laughter and safety. So it's not real, right? What people are protecting is not real, but they think it is because they're being told that way. And then even, I think it might even be a little bit subconscious, but that's what they start to believe. And so then they hold on, and when you're holding on, then you get scared, and when you get scared, then you can be manipulated, and when you can be manipulated, you can be exploited, and then you're used for the queen of smarties up here to go take it from other people, right? So what Howard Thurman said, he has this beautiful classic book called Jesus and the Disinherited, and it really was answering the question. He was in India, and he was talking to one of Gandhi's followers. Howard Thurman, if you're not aware, he was an African-American man that lived between like the 1920s and I can't remember. He was a generation ahead of Martin Luther King. And there was a person in India that confronted him because he was a Christian minister. And this person in India went up to him and said, how can you be professing this religion, this Christianity, when in your home country you have no rights as a Black man? And so he wrote this whole beautiful book called Jesus and the Disinherited, explaining his understanding of what it meant to be a follower of Jesus. And it's a little small thing, and it said that Martin Luther King never left his house without a copy of that in his pocket. But in this book, he wrote, the measure of a man's estimate of your strength is the kind of weapons he feels he must use in order to hold you fast in a prescribed place. Always, he must use the instruments that your strength demands. Always, he must use the means that your resistance exacts. I'm going to say that again, okay? The measure of a man's estimate of your strength, the people in power, you can tell how scared they are of you, is by the kind of weapons he feels he must use in order to hold you in your prescribed place. What does he think he needs to do in order to keep you down? Always, he must use the instruments that your strength demands. Always, he must use the means that your resistance enacts. And that's why you had the fire hoses and the dogs, because the people in power were scared of the civil rights people who were trying to demand their rights. You know what's happening today as we speak, probably? There are police guards protecting a crosswalk because in Florida, because after the Pulse shooting years ago, the crosswalk right by the Pulse nightclub was painted as a rainbow. And then this week, they painted over the rainbow. And so people came back and they repainted the rainbow. And then the city painted over the rainbow. And then they came back and they repainted the rainbow. And now today, they literally are paying police officers to guard the crosswalk. the level of strength they think they need to exact their power. So do you know what's happening all over the country right now? People are painting rainbow crosswalks. Maybe we need to paint a rainbow crosswalk over here on 5th or whatever. But isn't that, I mean, if you think about that, they are having armed police officers protecting against a crosswalk. And it's not the crosswalk, it's the power of the people who know in their hearts what is right. And the power of the people, the fear of the American people that are like, we're not going to be putting up with this. And right now it's resistance in so many ways. Right now it's resistance with rainbow crosswalks. But don't be fooled. That's a very powerful image. That is a very powerful action. Collectively, that makes a statement. And so when we think that we are alone, when we think, I can't do anything because Wendy only gave me one Smartie and she actually took away everybody else's, don't think like that. Look around and look at all of the people who might just show up with a can of paint and a paintbrush of different colors, and maybe we all just start painting together. And maybe that's how we begin to understand prosperity consciousness. That's how we overtake poverty consciousness. And that's how we end up doing labors of love on a daily basis. So with that, why don't we sing number 305, De Colores. extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go now in peace. Amen. If you are on Zoom, I will